Galileo Galilei, we pronounce sentence.
It was a time of discord in the Christian world. Threatened by the Protestant Reformation, the Roman Catholic Church demanded strict adherence to its dogma, enforced by the violent threat of Inquisition. Fear of heresy was in the air. In this turbulent era, Galileo Galilei would become Europe's most celebrated scientist.
He was so confident, he was such a brilliant writer, he was a tremendous wit. If there's any one single person who can be said to have created modern science, it's got to be Galileo.
His early experiments laid the foundation for modern physics, and his observations revealed new truths about the universe.
What we have in Galileo is a package, then, of somebody who is mechanically and practically very good. Somebody who is a great philosopher about nature, and somebody who is ambitious.
But ambition drove Galileo to question the Church's view of the world and revolutionize our understanding of astronomy. Ironically, Galileo himself was a faithful Catholic and gave his daughter Virginia to the Church. Joining the Sisters of St. Clare, she wrote letters to him, many of which survive today. They reveal a daughter's concern for the anguish of her father, whom the Church had silenced as a heretic and imprisoned in his own home. But Galileo would never lose his passion for explaining the natural world.
I wanted people to understand that nature gave them eyes to see her works, but also brains to make them capable of understanding them.
Who was this man who saw further than others into the far reaches of the universe? What does his suffering tell us about the recurring clash between religion and science?
Galileo was honest when he said that the Bible was the true Word of God. He just didn't think it was a good astronomy textbook.
Galileo's works were banned by the Church for centuries, and not until our own time would his rift with the Church be healed. Galileo would pay a terrible price, but his discoveries would change the world. Galileo was born into a world where each morning reaffirmed the common view that the sun moved around the earth. This belief was confirmed as the sun appeared to pass overhead each day. It was a view of the universe originally set out by the ancient philosopher Aristotle. In the center sat the static earth, the home of man. The sun was just one of many heavenly bodies which circled endlessly around it. Dissenting from this accepted worldview could prove hazardous. A statue of Father Giordano Bruno marks the site in Rome where he was burned alive for a host of unorthodox beliefs. The Vatican considered astronomy to be an investigation of God's work.
The Church's universities had 7 basic subjects that you had to pass before you could go on to philosophy and theology. One of those subjects was astronomy. Studying the stars was a way of getting themselves out of the mundane world into a world that was more transcendent. a world that was beautiful, a world that was eternal.
For the Church, there was also a practical reason to study the heavens. The sky was both a clock and a calendar. Behind the walls of convents, sunrise and sunset defined the cycle of morning and evening prayer. Each spring, the planting of the gardens would commence with the coming of the equinox. The winter solstice foreshadowed Christmas, and the phases of the moon fixed the exact dates of Lent and Easter.
Invano labora verum, qui edificant team, nisi Dominus.
The Church used the calendar to give spiritual significance to Aristotle's earth-centered astronomy.
The images were very useful for teaching theology. The earth is not the center of the universe in that it's in a privileged place. It's at the bottom of the universe. Only hell is lower. And there's a chain of creation reaching up to heaven.
As a young man, Galileo toyed briefly with the idea of becoming a priest. Instead, he entered the University of Pisa as a medical student in 1581. The curriculum at Pisa was prescribed by the Jesuit authorities in Rome. Even the anatomy diagrams in Galileo's textbooks had to be approved by the Jesuits. Galileo left medicine behind after only a few months and began instead to study mathematics. Among the many writings he left behind is an eloquent tribute to the power of mathematics to illuminate the world.
This grand book, The Universe, could only be understood if one learned to comprehend the language and the alphabet in which it is composed. That is, the language of mathematics. Triangles, and circles, and geometric figures, without which it was impossible, humanly impossible to understand a word of it. Without it, one wandered as in a dark labyrinth.
It's so confusing, the world. Where do we find truth? Where is the real truth? And there was a sort of consensus, which Galileo felt very deeply, that in mathematics you had real truth. If there was anywhere where human beings could think like God, it was when they were thinking about mathematics. So let's combine precise observation of nature, and let's apply that one technique of thought which we know God will share with us, which is mathematics, and let's put the two together, and then we will have a really secure foundation on which we can study things.
Galileo brought his mathematical studies to the University of Padua, 40 miles from Venice, far enough from Rome to be beyond the influence of the Jesuits and their officially approved curriculum.
And Padua itself was a university. It was founded in 1222 by breakaway students. It wasn't chartered by a king or by a pope. It was absolutely free and had the Free Republic of Venice as its supervisor. So getting a job in Padua was as close to getting academic freedom as you could want, certainly in Italy and probably rather uniquely in Europe.
The city of Venice was just a ferry ride from Padua, and it was here that the young professor spent many holidays. Galileo began a liaison with a Venetian woman named Marina Gamba. Little is known about her, but she was far from Galileo's social equal. The affair made his life complicated, but was not unusual, even among faithful Catholics.
Yes, he loved to have a good time. He enjoyed his wine. He enjoyed many forms of pleasure. But that didn't make him a bad Catholic, especially at a time when even the popes had illegitimate children.
Galileo himself had 3 illegitimate children. The eldest, Virginia, was born in 1600.
The birth records in Padua say that she was born of fornication. Because Galileo was not married to her mother, they